Virginia Lucas is a UX and a UX UI designer for the Advertising Specialty Institute. I'm going to let you, Virginia, talk a little bit more about what that means.
Hmm.
But I know Virginia from my time teaching at Moore College of Art, which is an all-women's art college here in Philly, down on the Parkway. And she was one of my star students in design. So I thought she'd be an excellent person to talk and present about her work. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Virginia, and I'm going
Okay.
to mute myself. And just if everyone else can kind of mute their own microphones if you haven't already, that would be great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Thank you for this invitation to share my experiences. So, hello, everyone. Again, my name is Virginia. I am a UX UI designer currently at Advertising Specialty Institute, also known as ASI. ASI is right outside of Philly in Trevose area, so it's not too far away. ASI is the promotional product industry's largest membership organization. The industry is made up of suppliers who create, source, and imprint products, and distributors who then creatively market and sell the imprinted products to their clients who use the products, to promote their business. So when you think of it, it's mostly like an event, or we sell products that's like from an event or a program where you want to show products that have your product logo on them. So ASI is a service. We provide both the distributor and the supplier with tools and applications to help them to be successful in their business with each other and with their clients. So what I do is I design those design experiences. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to, oh, having little issues. Okay. So I started as an intern at ASI right out of graduating my college. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I started out as an intern at ASI right out of graduating college. So I went to Moore. I graduated with a graphic design degree. Um, and that's where, as Jeffrey said previously, that's where I met him. He was one of my instructors. So I had a plan to go into commercial publishing. Um, my dream was to go to New York, and I wanted to work for the most iconic publishing companies such as Condé Nast, which produces brands like Vogue and Vanity Fair, GQ, and Wired. So that's why I thought that going into the editorial department at ASI was going to be my starting point. So after about 6 months as an intern, I was offered a full-time position as a junior designer. As a junior designer, I designed layouts for 5 award-winning B2B magazines called Wearables, Advantages, Counselor, Stitches, and SGR. I
And
designed,
sorry,
yep.
Virginia, can you just explain what B2B means? Because that
Oh,
might be a
oh
term
yeah.
that
So
students might not know.
B2B is business to business. So there's business to consumer magazines, and then there's business to business magazines, and that's what ASI offers. So I designed cover logos, feature layouts, and infographic spreads. I also assisted the creative director and the photographer with product styling and photo shoots, which was also great experience to help me on this editorial journey that I had set for myself. However, a year and a half into my design career, the new user experience department at ASI was looking for a designer to join their team. So, I was curious. I began to ask questions such as, well, what is user experience? How is it different from what I do as a graphic designer? So I met and spoke with someone from the UX department, and they saw my work. They needed a visual designer on their team, and the rest was history. So, being a graphic designer and then going into user experience design, I realized very quickly that graphic design and user experience design was not the same. However, they do have overlapping skills. So both graphic designers and UX designers solve problems through design. So as you can see here on the left, graphic design consists of two steps. First, analysis. Secondly, design. So let's go into analysis a little bit. So analysis is finding out, who's my target audience? Who am I designing for? What is their brand identity? What is their aesthetic? And then there's design, visual communication, in which the graphic designer uses color, imagery, and typography to communicate messages and ideas. So then you look over to UX design, and there's a little more to their process. So analysis and design, they are a part of the process, but it's treated a little bit differently. So first, you'll notice the first noticeable difference you'll see is step one is user research. A key part of the UX design process is research, both understanding the user's needs and context, and also usability testing. Testing products is a part of the process. Second, there's analysis. You're identifying design opportunities. You go into design, which is more conceptualizing and exploring design ideas by sketching and creating wireframes, which then goes into prototyping, which is the implementation of your idea. And it also allows the user to be interactive with your design, which then goes into testing. So you're handing that design, that prototype over to your users so that they can give you feedback. And then based on that outcome, you may iterate and go back into the process. So what is user experience? Here's a quote. So user experience refers to a person's emotions and attitudes about using a particular product, system, or service. It includes the practical, experiential, effective, meaningful, and valuable aspects of human-computer interaction and product ownership. Additionally, it includes a person's perceptions of system aspects such as utility, ease of use, and efficiency. So you'll be able to tell whether a product or a system has good user experience based on how users perceive it. While using the product, people will evaluate that experience by asking questions such as, does this product give me value? Is it easy to use? Is it pleasant to use? So let's go through the history of UX. So in 4000 BC came the concept of feng shui and the importance of space. So feng shui is all about arranging your surroundings in the most optimal, harmonious, or user-friendly way, be it an office, a bedroom, or an entire building. It concerns everything from layout and framework to materials and colors. So just as an interior designer might arrange the furniture in a way that makes it easy for the inhabitants to navigate the room, a UX designer would apply similar principles to the task of creating a mobile app. The end goal is the same, to create an intuitive, user-friendly experience. In 500 BC, the ancient Greeks and ergonomics, there was evidence that suggests as early as the 5th century BC, Greek civilizations designed their tools and workplaces based on ergonomic principles. According to the International Economics Association, Ergonomics Association, ergonomics or human factors is the scientific discipline concerned with the understanding of interactions among humans and other elements of a system. It also is the profession that applies theory, principles, data, and methods to design and optimize human well-being and overall system performance. That sounds like UX, right? So in the early 1900s, let's fast forward 1,000 years to meet Frederick Winslow Taylor. Frederick was a mechanical engineer and pioneer of Taylorism, otherwise known as scientific management. On a mission to make human labor more efficient, Taylor conducted extensive research into interactions between workers and their tools. So in 1911, he wrote The Principles of Scientific Management, in which he asserted that systematic management is the solution to inefficiency. In the 1940s, Toyota came up with the value of human input. So continuing on the quest for workplace efficiency, Toyota developed their famous human-centered production system. Unlike Taylorism, the Toyota production system was based upon respect for people, and much attention was paid to creating the optimal working experience. Not only that, but human input was considered crucial and was actively encouraged. For example, Toyota factory workers could pull a cord to stop the assembly line if they had feedback or suggestions to improve the process. So that is just like usability testing in action. In 1955, Henry Dreyfuss was another key figure in the history of UX design. He was an American industrial engineer who was renowned for designing and improving the usability of some of the most iconic consumer products, including the Hoover vacuum cleaner, the tabletop telephone, and the Royal Typewriter Company's Quiet Deluxe model. So Dreyfuss' design philosophy was based on common sense and scientific approaches. In 1955, he wrote Designing for People, which is pretty much explains UX design in a nutshell. He said, when the point of contact between product and the people becomes a point of friction, then the designer has failed. On the other hand, if people are made safer, more comfortable, more eager to purchase, more efficient, or just plain happier by contact with the product, then the designer has succeeded. Going along into 1966, Walt Disney, which some claim to be the first UX designer, indeed Disney was obsessed with creating magical, immersive, near perfect user experiences. And the way he set about building Disney World was a true stroke of UX genius. In his article for UX Magazine, Joseph Dickerson outlines Walt Disney's guiding principles for his team of engineers, or what he called Imagineers. And those principles are: know your audience, wear your guest's shoes, communicate with color, shape, form, and texture. And the 1970s was the Xerox, Apple, and the PC era. So in the 1970s kicked off the era of personal computers, with psychologists and engineers working together to focus on the user experience. Many of the most influential developments came out of Xerox PARC Research Center, such as the graphical user interface and the mouse. In many ways, PARC set the tone for personal computing as we know it today. And now over to Apple in 1984, the original Macintosh was released, Apple's first mass market PC feature that showed graphical user interface, built-in screen, and mouse. Fast forward to 1995, Don Norman coins the term user experience. He came up with the term user experience design as a way of encompassing all that UX is. As he explains, I invented the term because I thought human interface and usability were too narrow. I wanted to cover all aspects of the person's experience with the system, including industrial design, graphics, the interface, the physical interaction, and the manual. In 1988, Norman published The Psychology of Everyday Things, later updated to The Design of Everyday Things, which continues to be a UX staple to this day. So Norman also said, user experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the company, its services, and its products. So here are a few examples of interactions that expresses the brand's values. So if you look over to the top right, that is Tesla's Model S door handles, which magically extend when they sense the key nearby. That causes for a great experience. Then you have the Nest Learning Thermostat's Farsight, which adjusts the thermostat user interface based on how far away you're standing. So if I'm up close, I can see the thermostat's temperature in detail, but when I'm far away, I can only see that temperature. And then you have Disney's Magic Wand, which lives up to being called the most magical place on earth by delivering a personalized, delightful interaction by way of a low-profile wristband with sensors throughout the park. So this matches with the accounts, the reservation, and the preferences of the user. So when you arrive to a restaurant, a server may greet you by name and tell you to sit wherever you like, and your food will magically find you. So that all helps in that user experience. So what is UX design? So we know the history now of user experience, but what is user experience design? So the focus of the UX design team is meeting the goals and the needs of the target audience. When you look into user experience design, you'll see that there are multiple disciplines. There's user research, information architecture, interaction design, usability evaluation. There's also accessibility evaluation. There's visual design and content strategy. And then depending on the industry you're in, you may hear of product design, service design, game, behavior design, and web analytics. However, the user experience design role is multidisciplinary. It includes visual design, which is creating an effective visual hierarchy for the user interface, the UI. Information architecture, which is satisfying the target audience's goals by analyzing key tasks and defining user flow accordingly. There's interaction design, optimizing the interplay between humans and product interfaces. How are the people using the product? What's their interaction with it? There's usability, analyzing how people use your product, and content strategy, aligning content with overall product strategy. The UX designer is also very collaborative. On a daily basis, we are working with product managers, developers, marketers, and other designers, all to reach that goal to offer the best service. The user experience designer also incorporates or merges the business needs as well as the user needs, because most of the time they may not be aligned. The business need and the user needs may not be aligned, so that the role of the UX designer and the responsibility of the UX designer is to merge the two. So let's take a look at this short trailer of a documentary by Envision called Design Disruptors. This documentary shows how the smartest and fastest growing companies are using design to drive their business and how they are successful.
People look around and they realize that we are living in what's essentially revolutionary times.
Over the last 5 years, there's been several billion-dollar companies started by designers, and that's a new phenomenon.
Companies are starting to get closer to the idea that if you can create an amazing experience, it's going to help improve your business.
Engineers think about computers and think about systems. Does this actually functionally work? Where designers have to think about people and their emotional state and their quirks and idiosyncrasies.
At its best, design is human. It's not about, does it have drop shadows? Is it pretty? It's more about the connection I have to it.
When we think about designing products, we're trying to tap into things that are natural and to like and share things. These are things that existed well before Facebook did.
We are just in the infancy of developing a whole language around gestures. The first time that I zoomed, it was like, oh, fantastic. I almost want to get to a point where I can caress products because that's humane. I don't click people.
We're going to draw 3 panels of a solution. What we want to do is think about how a user is actually going to navigate through an interface.
We can quickly build stuff and test it with users, so we'll know when something as subtly has changed about our environment and a new thing is possible.
And that's when you can be very, very powerful, very dangerous to the incumbents.
Even the best companies in the world that just have amazing processes, they're vulnerable if they haven't thought about design.
There's less space today for a clunky, painful experience.
People have choice now. If they open it up and in a few seconds they don't immediately understand the value, they're done.
I think at the end of the day, what we really want to know is how big of a human problem are we solving?
The questions now aren't, can we build it? Because more and more the answer is yes, we can build anything. The question is, what is the future that we want to build together? For me, that's the power of design.
So that's pretty cool, right? You can see that companies like Google, Pinterest, MailChimp, and Facebook, they are using the process of design thinking to give the best experiences and meet their business goals. So what is design thinking? Design thinking consists of 6 steps according to the Nielsen and Norman Group. The first step, empathize. Research your user needs. Understand them, get to know their pain points. Secondly, define. State your user's needs and problems. Write it down. Make that problem statement solid so that everyone can have an understanding of what the goal is. Ideate. Challenge assumptions and create ideas. Start to sketch. Start to design out some ideas and ways that you can solve this problem. Next, prototype. Start to create your solutions. Allow it to be interactive so that you can go into testing, which is trying out your solution, and then implementation, putting that vision into effect. So I'm just going to show you a few tools and a few different ways that you can use the design thinking process. So empathize and define. So you see an example here of a tool called Delighted. And this tool helps you to send out surveys, or you can allow users to rate your product or your service on the scale of 1 to 0, or 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. You see here is an example that says, how likely are you to recommend Delighted to a friend? I'm sure we've all encountered tools that, you finish an action or you take an action and then afterwards you get a survey like this. So within this tool, you can see the user's pain points. You can better understand them. You can empathize with their needs. And then you can take action based upon that. And then you can also define that problem with these insights. So different tools are Delighted from the top to the bottom, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, Typeforms, and Slack. You can also use Slack. You can create a channel, send it out to your users or invite your users and allow them to just give feedback about your service. Next is ideate and prototype. So we use tools such as Envision. Adobe has an XD prototyping tool. Sketch, we use that for designing and also prototyping. UX Pen is another that you can use to design, prototype, and create motion graphics or animations. And you can also use Figma. So here to the right, you see an example of a sketch tool, a sketch and Envision tool, where you basically, you design your artboards, and then you can connect one page to the next. So if I click here, then this shows, or if I click here, this action appears. The next two is testing and implementation. So tools that we use for testing are Zoom for video conferencing and video design validation, Hotjar and Full Story for heat maps and eye tracking. Heat map and eye tracking tools help you to analyze the user behavior and understand the customer journey, and to make your app and your service ultimately better.
Can you just explain a little bit more about what heat maps and eye tracking do?
Sure. So with a eye tracker, it will track where your eyes are looking on the page. So if you can see on that top left picture, you'll see the little red dots. And then if you see a cluster of red dots, that's where the user is looking at the most. That's the area that the user is looking at the most. And so if you may see one or, one dot in a random area, then that means that they may have just glanced over there, but mostly you want to look for the clusters. And that's the same for the heat mapping, where the red areas are. That's where it's hot. That's where the user is looking at the most, or that's where their focus is. And then the cooler the color gets. So if it's blue, they're not really looking at it. They may be glancing over at it, but that's not the hot spot. If that explains that, Jeffrey. So then also, you can use tools such as usertesting.com and Userlytics for video conferencing. That's real-time feedback from your users. So I'm going to show you an example of a user testing session for a mobile app. This user was given a task to complete, and she will give real-time feedback to validate the design. And it's pretty long, so I'm going to stop it at some point.
I don't think we can hear the sound.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you did last time worked.
Okay, let me try it again.
Yeah, sure.
Can you hear it now?
No, I can't hear it. It's funny because we tried this one earlier and it worked. So.
And it worked. Yeah, that's weird. Okay. So since you can't hear it, then I'll just explain it a little bit. Jeffrey, it looks like you're muted.
Well, what kind of feedback do users give you? So that maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah. So I won't say a lot of the time, but there are times where users will use the app in a way that the designer did not intend. So that's really insightful to see, how the user is interacting with it. And, because you are not your user. A lot of times designers think that way, like, oh, okay, if I feel like I can do it this way, or if I feel like I can navigate the app to fulfill my goal, then that may not be the same thinking that the user may have. So it's great to have this design validation by video so that you can, in real time, see how they're using the application so that you can better the service and cater it more towards the user. So how can you recognize good UX design? So I'm going to give you a couple of lessons and tips on how to recognize good UX design. I'm going to give 3 examples of obviously bad designs and then shine some light on the good design examples. So lesson number 1, provide the right, I'm sorry, this is a typo, provide enough of the right information. So you can see over here on the right, this is an example of an error message. And it's telling the user that the information provided is incorrect, but it doesn't give clear information on which of the 2 fields is incorrect. It says the email or the password you entered is incorrect. But here's an example of effective UX. The validation message tells the user which information is correct and which is incorrect. The user does not have to get frustrated and create both a new username and password to continue onto the site. The message reads, "Sorry, we couldn't find an account with that username. Can we help you recover your username? And sorry, the password isn't right. We can help you recover your password." That's a better experience than for me to have to guess which I had wrong, which of them that I had wrong. And lesson number 2, avoid visual clutter. So we can see this example in parking signs. This is an image taken by George Gonzalez of parking signs in LA. So how confusing are these signs? I mean, very confusing. Imagine pulling up alongside this road. Can I park here? Yes, no, maybe. So what seems like a simple answer takes a lot of processing. But here's a good example. This is from a designer from Brooklyn. Her name is Nikki Sillington. She created a design solution that displays the same information on the left here, but is easy to understand and is effective. Third, eliminate friction in the user journey. So friction is anything that prevents users from accomplishing their goals. It reduces conversions and frustrates would-be customers to the point of abandoning the task. So one common example.
Sorry, can you
Yep.
just explain the term conversions in case people don't understand that?
So conversions are, I'm sorry, am I having technical difficulties? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. So conversions in a user experience it means to helping the user achieve their goal. So a conversion might be like a sign up or a purchase or when you request a quote. So those are, I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties.
We can hear you just fine.
So conversions is basically helping the user to not go away from this area or not struggle from keeping that business. So you don't want them to steer away from reaching their goal or accomplishing their goal. You want them to accomplish that goal that you have in place. So one common example of friction is login walls. So pages that ask the user to log in or register before proceeding. So mostly on online shopping checkout processes, you'll see that login walls are at the checkout. And login walls have a significant interaction cost because users must take the time to create a new account and remember their credentials to purchase. So this forces registration too early, and it can cause more than 85% of users to abandon the product. So even Amazon, as you can see, is guilty of this. It forces the user to register before allowing them to purchase the selected items. So many users just leave the site, they just abandon the site. So let's look at an example of a good design, a good experience. So here, the registration process can usually be simplified with a guest checkout option. So for e-commerce apps and websites, it makes perfect sense to ask for billing information upon checkout, but not force the user to register before allowing them to purchase selected items. So you see here, are you new to this site? Well, then you can sign up using an existing application such as Facebook or Google, which most people are usually signed in to already. Or if you're already registered, then you can sign up to check out. So UX is essential. The success of your product and your business to the success of your product and your business. So push for great UX throughout the entire development process. Make customer needs the core of your design. UX is all about users having the best experience. Continue getting feedback from customers to ensure you're on the right path, and never stop in your quest to get UX right. Takeaways from that: UX is essential to the success of a product and a business. 2, push for great UX throughout the entire development process. You're working with those different team members to make sure you push for the best user experience. 3rd, make customer needs the core of your design. 4th, user experience is all about users having the best experience. Remember, you are not your user. 5, always get feedback from customers to ensure you're on the right paths. And 6, never stop in your quest to get UX right. So here are some references that you can use to learn more about UX. So some books are The Design of Everyday Things from Don Norman, Don't Make Me Think from Steve Krug, and he also has a revisited version. And there is 100 Things That Every Designer Needs to Know About People by Susan Weinschenk. And there's also some user research resources that you can use, like the Nielsen Norman Group. They show like best practices for UX, Babe-Mard Institute, usability.gov. There are courses online, which are sometimes free or they're just reasonably priced, from the Career Foundry, Udemy, lynda.com, and Interaction Design Foundation. And also, if you want to read up on articles about UX, you can go to places like UX Collective, UX Planet, UX Beginner, Smashing Magazine. I don't have on here, but meetups are also good. If you want to just, learn about user experience, you can go to different meetup groups that's in your area. And also, you can find things on YouTube as well.
Is that can you send us that slide, or that slide, the next one, when you're done with the presentation?
Sure. And these are just resources that I use throughout this presentation. And thank you all.
Thanks so much. So now if anyone has any questions, I forwarded your questions on to Virginia, so I think she might respond to some of those. But if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat right now. It looks like we have one from Nathaniel. Is it hard to interpret feedback? Like, does the user sometimes give you feedback that they think is helpful, but it really isn't, and you're kind of left kind of stuck?
So is it hard to, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, so is it hard to interpret feedback from users? And I think what he's getting at is that, you know, your users are not speaking in the language of design, right?
Right.
And
right.
so sometimes they might give you feedback which isn't really that helpful, or, you know, isn't articulate, or, you know, it probably takes some effort to interpret what they're saying. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so yeah, sometimes that is the case. So what we do to help with that is to observe that user so that we can better understand what they mean by when they say certain things. So with those usability testing, or we'll do things like focus groups. So we get the user into a room and have them work through the steps or show us what their pain points are. So if they're trying to explain it and, you know, and they can't really articulate what they're trying to say, then we have them show it to us. We have them share their screen so that we can better understand their feedback.
Yeah, so does anyone else have any questions before we dig into the questions you've already posted?
I did see some questions about internships, and I highly recommend internships. Before I started at ASI, I interned at Anthropology, which is a part of Urban Outfitters, is one of the child companies of Urban Outfitters. I've interned at theater companies. I've also interned here at ASI, which you can see that I started a career there. But I highly recommend internships. They totally help you find your path and your niche, and you know which industry or which field you want to go into. At Anthropology, I did mostly print design, signage for stores or labels. And I love the fashion industry. So I got that experience. I got to, you know, experience real world scenarios of, okay, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life or for the furtherance of my career? So I highly recommend internships. When I interned at the theater company, People's Light, I was able to broaden my skills because each play or each sketch had a different theme. So I was able to be very creative in the things that I've created, the different posters or mailers that I've worked on. I was able to express a lot of creativity in that role. And then even with editorial, like I said, that was going to be my dream. So I thought I was just going to go to ASI and intern for a few months and then move off to New York. But while I was there, I learned that, yes, I do like graphic design. I do like designing layouts, and I do like editorial content. However, user experience was a little more interesting because it was more challenging for me. And, you know, whereas in graphic design and in editorial, I can design a aesthetically pleasing layout, but I don't really know the user on the other end. And so that's what I love most about user experience. And that's, you know, why I made that career switch. But I would have never known that if I didn't, you know, have all of those internships. And I'm not saying have a ton, but throughout school and throughout your learning, it's nice to get that real world experience. So it can help you make a decision on where you want to spend the rest of your career.
Can you talk a little bit about how, because you got your full-time job from, you know, the internship that you had. So can you talk
Yep.
a little bit about how you conducted yourself as an intern, which, because it seemed like you weren't really there like hunting for a full-time job at that place?
No, right.
And can you talk a little bit about how you may have conducted yourself there that made you an attractive candidate for a full-time job?
Yeah, so I came in just open-minded, ready to learn. I asked a ton of questions, when I first started. They already So I was scouted out to an internship, so I didn't have to apply for that internship. So the art director for the editorial department came to my senior show at Moore College of Art and Design. So she came to my senior show. She liked my design. So, make a good effort. I don't know if LaSalle has senior shows or if they have a senior thesis, but make a good effort on that because you never know who's watching and who's seeing your work. But she saw my design and she actually approached me and said, "Hey, do you want to intern at ASI, for our editorial department?" So when I came in, I was just ready to prove myself. Like, yes, I am a student, but I can help your business as well. I can, make great design for your business. And I worked with senior designers, and, mid-level designers as well. And I've always asked questions, asked for advice, and they were willing to give me different challenging works and challenging tasks because they knew that, I wanted to learn and that I had a passion for design. So, that passion shows, when you have it, it shows. And people want to help you and want to help you grow when you show that passion. So, I wasn't showing up late, or crawling in or anything. I made sure that I was the best employee that I could be. And I took on some challenges while I was there to prove to them that, I could do the work and I could keep up.
Can you also talk a little bit about, I know one of the questions that people had were they were asking you about your art history minor at Moore and like whether that did or didn't kind of speak into your professional work, or whether it prepared you or whether it had any part to play in kind of preparing you professionally. And I think the question is partly due to the fact that we have an art history major and minor here at
Oh,
LaSalle.
okay.
And so, I think some people might be interested in pursuing that, but I think they're always looking for how does this, speak into my professional ambitions.
Yeah. So, what I would have to say to that is, I love history because you can always reference what was done before and it can help you on what you do today. I wasn't always a history fan, like when I was in grade school and high school, but actually when I went into college, the instructor that I had for art history actually sparked that interest of, learning the history of, the art history and, the different time periods, etc. Now, how that helps me in my work, more for print design, I haven't used it yet in UX design, although we did just go through the history of user experience. But in the print design, I could reference and be inspired by some of those periods in art history. So if I would have never learned of those styles or those periods, then I wouldn't be able to be as creative in some of, my design decisions. So it was always a point of reference that I could use. It was a resource that I can use to draw inspiration from.
That's great. We did have Sanra asked, I think she said, how did you find those internships? And I think she means the initial one, because you talked about how you were recruited for the Advertising Specialty Institute, but
Yes.
But some of the earlier internships, how did you get those?
Well, I always asked around. So at Moore, I had an instructor who used to work for anthropology before she began to teach. And so we had a course at Moore for internships, just focusing on internships. And so I reached out to her. She was no longer working for Moore. She had moved on and moved to California to do publishing and book design. But I sent her an email. I said, hey, my dream. So I always had these big dreams. I'm like, my dream is to intern for free people because I feel like I'm their customer, I'm their consumer. So I want to intern there, like I want to put my stamp and imprint on their, on their branding. And so I reached out and she came back to me. She said, well, I used to work for anthropology. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do know. Like, I do remember that. That's why I'm reaching out to you. And she was just like, well, if you want to intern for anthropology instead, because I know the creative director at anthropology. So if you want to intern at anthropology, then, send me your resume, send me your portfolio, and I'll let her know to look out for you, look out for your name and look out for your portfolio. And she did, so I reached out to someone, I had a network and I reached back into that network, to see if there was any connections in the types of internships that I wanted. So that was one case. Now for People's Light internship, it was a little different. We actually had a contest at my school at Moore to design a logo or redesign the logo for People's Light. And with that contest, I did submit my work and I won the contest. And after winning the contest, I basically asked, like, well, is there any internships that you're looking for? I'm looking for some experience. I'm looking to help out. And they were like, sure, like, we can see your work. Your work speaks for itself. Like, you're a great designer. Sure, we'll bring you on as an intern. So it was really me just reaching out to people and being assertive and, showing people that I was interested. So it's in who you know and being assertive.
That's great. Yeah, especially now when I think, there's a really great opportunity for networking right now. It just won't be face to face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though the jobs probably are scarce,
Yeah.
there's probably a lot of there's probably going to be a lot of opportunities for internships.
Oh, yeah.
And freelance work, maybe just not like consistent full-time work.
Yep.
But
absolutely.
So, and I like your point about, letting it be known what you're looking for.
Yes.
And doing research. So it's almost like you took a design approach to your job
Yeah.
search.
Yes. That's a great way to look at it. Yep.
Okay, well, we are out of time. So I just want to thank you so much for giving us this time and putting it together, this presentation. And
absolutely.
And if you could send those resources, those 2 slides with the resources, that would be awesome, because I think you've piqued a lot of interest amongst the students.
Great.
And I'm sure that they would like to learn more.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was definitely a pleasure, and I'll send you those things. Thank you so much, students, for listening. And I hope you got a lot out of this presentation.